Yeah.
We couldn't guess it.
Okay, so we've got integrate, disintegrate, separate, divide, break.
Oh yeah, the
Break.
simplest whatever.
What's the little other word? Because it's a phrasal verb, we need to
Break down.
break up.
Break up.
You could have breakdown, something breaks down
Yeah.
into smaller molecules. Both of those, strangely, kind of mean the same thing. Yeah.
And there is
You couldn't think of break like this, the simplest word.
Yeah, I know.
differentiate.
That's
There's no
true.
thinking hard
That's
thinking of
right.
hard work.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was thinking of like a long
In this context, integrate, connection, yeah. So that's true mathematically. But in this context, these would be more.
So
Yeah.
what about sparse? Sparse.
Sparse. Sparse means not very common, spread out. Spread out,
Spread out.
yeah.
Is it-
Given that that's a verb, we really need verbs here, don't we? Sparse isn't a verb, it's an adjective. It describes things spread out. You could say spread out, maybe. That would work.
How about to exclude?
Integrate, yeah, another, in this context, could do that, yeah.
You could put
Really very context dependent, isn't it?
Exclude.
Yeah. Spread out, disperse. You know the word disperse?
Yeah.
Very similar to spread out. Scatter.
Suppose it's disappeared and
Okay, undertook, give up, yeah, neglect, foregoes, good one. End, finish, cease, stay.
Ah, yes.
Stay away from, maybe. Like not participate. I think if you want to stay, you have to say keep away from or something like that. That sort of mean deny. Deny, maybe, depends on the context. But yeah, those are the ones I was sort of looking for. Concentrate, deconcentrate. Can you deconcentrate? Distract.
Salute.
Disperse, certainly this one. Distract, if you have distract, yeah, okay. I see what you mean. Deconcentrate. Don't know if you can say it. Does it exist in somebody's dictionary? Again, there's this question of if it does, it's not very common.
Solution.
yeah, that's a
Disperse, I think, is a good one. I would not.
deconcentrated is I think used for like something mixing in something. It's most
Yeah,
most
I
of
don't-
scientific
It's not very
sort
common.
of word.
I wouldn't use it. So concentrate, disperse is a good one. Distract. What we'll do is, part of the idea of this is we'll use thesaurus.com in a minute, the thing I've mentioned, so we can explore this one. Obvious, yes. Vague. Ambiguous, yeah. Non-obvious. I guess you can say non-obvious. Yeah. Obscure. That was the one I was thinking of. Unclear, unclarified, not really gloomy, that's more positive or negative. And
And not
yeah, I guess cloudy's more physical. You don't say, oh, that's a cloudy idea. You say, oh, that's a vague idea.
Yeah, about concentrate, I'm a bit worried because when you put something in something, like the chemical
Yeah.
formula, like chemical rule, goes from higher concentration to a lower concentration. If we
Ah,
opposite there,
okay.
so deconcentration means
Yeah.
like it's not
Okay.
concentrating.
Here's the word I think you need there.
Dilute.
Dilute.
Dilute,
Dilute. So concentrated acid, hydrochloric acid, you put in 10 litres of water,
Yeah.
you dilute it.
Dilutes inside, like mix inside.
Yeah, it mixes and reduces the concentration.
But is it the opposite for the concentrate? Or
Yeah,
is it-
yeah. So you'll concentrate the chemical,
yeah, it's in the one place.
Yeah.
But
or you'll make
dilutes
it
spread out.
stronger. In any 1 litre,
Yeah,
you've got a greater concentration.
yeah,
So if you add water, you weaken it,
yeah.
dilute.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
how about unobviousness?
Unobviousness. Never heard it. It sounds. It doesn't sound very nice either. It sounds sort of like. Do you know that? There's that saying, "What is a camel?" A camel, it's got this long neck and long legs and a hump, and you know, they say it's a horse designed by a committee. And that's the kind of feeling about that word. What was it? Unobviousness. Not very elegant. You know.
They use
It's sort of like a camel. I wouldn't use it. I don't think it exists either.
Is it non-obvious or unobvious?
Well, look, that is. I think that's a bit of a camel too. I wouldn't use it. I mean, it may exist in some dictionaries, but again, it feels like something designed by a committee. Let's have a look at the resource I was mentioning. So Tuesday we used the activator and to get words that were similar. What we're talking about here are words that are opposite, but this thing does both. Let's see. Remember that word thesaurus? It's always number one in the Google search. Thesaurus.com. So if we put in there obvious, we'll get synonyms here. So you get quite a list. And then see, straight underneath, there are your antonyms. And so a number of those are there, I think. Now, it's unlike the activator in the sense that you just get the words and you don't get example sentences, you don't get your grammar clues or whatever. But I think you can see in that one word you get more choices. Whoops, I must have hit the wrong button there, go back. For either the synonyms or the antonyms, you get a lot more choices than the activator. So this is what natives will use because they'll often know the words, but they're just, wanting to remember the whole package and then choose. Now, it keeps on going because it depends on, these are slightly different, aren't they, in category even. So, see how we're getting more categories here? Axiomatic, which means like really fundamental, a fundamental idea. That could mean, that's one meaning of obvious, but here's another one. Barefaced. Barefaced means when someone says something, they don't care about the social consequences. So that's a really different meaning of obvious from the earlier one. So you're getting a totally different group of words, do you see? Something is clear. These are all synonyms. Synonym groups. Clear cut, a whole lot of words. Look how many there are. It's overwhelming, really. Commonplace. So another meaning of obvious is like, well, that's just kind of everywhere, everyone knows it. And there's a whole lot of words there. Things like stereotype, for example. So what you have to do with this is don't just dive in at the top there. It's good to look down the categories. Notice there's only one group of antonyms. They don't have lots of categories of antonyms. If you see a word there and you think, well, I don't know what that means, say that one. Palpable. You can click it. Now, if you click that, we're going to get synonyms for palpable. That's not very helpful. You've clicked on it, now you go to click dictionary, and it gives you your definition of what that word means. Okay, in this case, readily or plainly seen, heard, perceived. And if you think, oh yeah, that's the one I want, use it. Notice it's still limited though you don't get example sentences. You get a bit of history of the word. Oh yeah, examples. Oh, there are examples further down. Yeah, so they're taking them out of, looks like a novel, and newspaper articles and so on. So yeah, they actually do, that's a new development, that's good. They provide some real examples, and quite a bit actually on each word. So that can clarify things. If we just go back, you can get back to your original point. You can, with these things, control it. Right? If we go high in complexity, those are meant to be the words that are more complex. I mean, it's a computer, so it's not always that, because I think palpable is one of the more complex and discernible, but I tend not to use these things. It's automatically set there anyway, so you see them all. I think you can click here, common, and it will give you the more common ones. So they're probably the safer ones to work with. I think that's a useful function. So what I'm talking about here now is synonyms. Right? This is probably a good point to introduce this, because over the weekend you could go through your essay and have a look and think, you know, which words do I want to improve? I keep using the same word all the time, or this one's a bit boring. What can I get? I want something more precise. Certainly after Monday, once you run it through your vocabulary profiler, you'll be able to see certain words, your very common words you're using. They're good to try to put in here and find something a bit more interesting. So, yeah, you can, oops, why has that changed? Go back. So yeah, you've got this. You've also got this, for some reason it's not lighting up, informal. So you can click that. It's not clicking for some reason here. Don't know why. But that would be useful.
Informal words in this list?
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe there are no informals in that list. But if you click that, you can see the informals, and they would be words to avoid in your essay, wouldn't they? They'd be too spoken. So both those buttons are kind of useful. Length simply refers to length of word, I think. I think if we put that up high, yeah, see how you're getting only longer words and phrases and so on. So you can control it that way as well. Relevance. Relevance terms.
Are they linked with the collocation or?
They're not linked with collocations. That's another question again. To find the collocation, so you select the palpable. Let's explore the other resource for collocation that I've mentioned. We've looked at just the word. Okay. So you said, oh yeah, I want to use this word. Just go to the other one. Ausdic, pretty easy to remember. Oz, think of Oz as in Australia. Slang, isn't it? Oz.
Why is it
I don't know why they call it Ausdic. I don't think it's an Australian thing.
why Australian?
Ah, why is it? Because of Australia, Oz. Do you know the story Wizard of Oz? Yeah, with the magic land where Dorothy goes. So it just got the nickname Oz. And what's the city, the magic city in the land of Oz, where Dorothy goes? The wizard lives there. What colour is that city?
Green.
Green, right, because it's made of emeralds, isn't it? Right, one city in Australia, the dazzling bright city, that's the exciting centre of Australia, Sydney. That is called Emerald City. Right? That's, if you say, oh, how was your time in the Emerald City? You mean Sydney.
Emerald?
Emerald. Emerald, the...
Изумруд.
that precious stone. How do you say it in Russian?
Изумруд.
I don't know. Sounds similar to something.
I think it's
A
sort
little
of
bit similar, yeah.
Persian as well.
Hmm?
Sort of Persian.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, you know,
Yeah, so Emerald City. Now, some of you are reading David Williamson. He wrote a play called Emerald City, and it's set in Sydney. In the 1980s, Melbourne historically has always kind of been the capital of Australia, in the sense that, okay, Federation 1901, the capital was Melbourne. Parliament House was there. In the 1920s, they created Canberra, artificial city. So that formally became the capital. However, as I've explained to you, because of the gold rush in the 1850s and the very fast development of Melbourne, it became the kind of logistical centre, financial centre of Australia, cultural centre. Sydney developed, but never really claimed that from Melbourne. In the 1980s, there was a big development boom and it affected Sydney a lot. And a lot of finance went to Sydney. And there was a lot of up-and-coming young people. There was a term in the 1980s, a yuppie. Young, upwardly mobile professional. Yuppie. That term got invented in England, in London, because neoliberalism, when it came in the 80s, Thatcherism, opening up the finance markets and the banks in London, really accelerated London as a financial centre in the world, and a lot of people into finance, young people. It was also the beginning of the digital revolution with computers, and there was this massive number of people rising up, and land prices went up in London. Same thing happened, smaller scale, in Sydney, and you might know of something similar in your native country in the 80s. But yeah, the yuppies all went to Sydney to, you know, get a fantastic new shining career, and that's when it really got its name, Emerald City. And David Williamson's play is about exactly that, the young, ambitious people in Sydney. So there you go, a little bit of
Which one is the city
cultural
of China?
background. Hey?
Which one is City of China? In Oz, the Wizard of Oz.
City of China.
Yeah, there's a city, everything is made of China, even people.
Ah. L. Frank Baum, who wrote that story, wrote about 5 or 6 books about Oz, but only one became famous. And I've
And
read
there's
that
a
a
movie
few
on that as
times,
well.
and there's a
Is it?
film. So
Oz.
it's not in that book,
Oz.
but it might be in the others, but I don't know.
I didn't watch
Yeah.
it, but I heard the name.
Anyway, so that's why Oz, yeah.
Another one.
Let's go to Oz Dick.
I'm not sure.
Now, palpable. Say we chose that word. Palpable. Not found. Okay, that's interesting. Right. As I said, it'd be interesting because if we put it into just the word, I think we'd find it. Just the word is more advanced, more complex. Ozdick, as I said, I haven't introduced you to it yet because it is just simpler. But it's kind of quicker and, okay, let's go back a little bit and get, you know, a more common word. So Ozdick tends to deal with more common words. And for your purposes, most of the time you're dealing with fairly high frequency words, and this will still be very useful. So, okay, obvious. It appears obvious, it is obvious, it looks obvious, seems obvious, sounds obvious, becomes obvious. They are, now remember just the word. If we looked in just the word, we get a lot more, wouldn't we? This is just taking your top half dozen. Make something obvious. His manner made it obvious he didn't like it. There are your adjectives. Blatantly obvious, blindingly obvious, extremely obvious, glaringly obvious, patently obvious, blah, blah, blah. So that one, look, that first row is for very, when you really want to intensify it very strongly. Here, lower, what we call graduation. A bit obvious, fairly obvious, pretty obvious, rather obvious. Can you see how it's grouping these with slightly different functions? This one is more like, was it immediately obvious, like right now, or maybe seemingly obvious, apparently obvious, not sure. It's kind of weird. You're not sure if it's obvious or not. Preposition, to. It's obvious to me, to someone, etc. That one's an interesting one. Look, the negative, something negative is obvious. Depressingly obvious, distressingly obvious, painfully obvious would probably be most common there. It was becoming painfully obvious that the two of them had nothing in common. Yeah. All right, so I think you can see there, that's kind of a quicker, easier. That's your quick takeaway meal, isn't it? That's your Macca's and your Kentucky Fried Chicken version of the collocation site. Just the word is more your French restaurant. Yeah. So it didn't have palpable. I'm just interested if we go into just the word. Just to compare the two resources. Yeah, that's interesting. We don't we don't get a lot, but we get something. All right. So just the words digging just that bit deeper, and we could look at the various sentence examples there. There are your examples. Yeah. Now the reason almost is palpable means like you can almost touch, taste and smell and feel it. And it's usually, yeah, like this one, it's usually about emotion. His reluctance was almost palpable. I mean, in other words, it was so strong, kind of everybody in the room could almost smell it, taste it, touch it. And that's why we put almost, because literally you can't. But we say some emotional feeling was almost palpable. You could almost taste it. Right? That's why almost is the collocation. So if you explored most of those, look, excitement, love, etc., tension, they're about emotion, aren't they? So this is quite important. Like if you really want to get to understand a word, get into this example level and try to see, is there a general kind of pattern? You probably won't find a 100% pattern. In language it's rare, isn't it? But there's quite a dominant pattern in there. That palpable is related to feelings and emotions. Okay, now one of the reasons why palpable might not come up in Ausdic is, what I'm trying to do here now
Cambridge.
is just, Cambridge has it in the dictionary. I would expect it should. Yeah, what does it say, Alex, for palpable?
Very obvious.
Right, yeah. Do you remember word count? We visited this the other day. So you think, oh, you know, why isn't Ausdic dealing with it and just the word gets only one result? Maybe it's not very common.
And interesting thing,
24,000. So it's, you know, it's beyond graduate vocabulary, isn't it? So that's probably one of the reasons. But can you see what I'm trying to do here? Like we're week 7, we've learned kind of a major resource a week. What we're starting to be able to do is cross-refer, you know, and we get different knowledge from each one, don't we? I could now go into Etim Online, say, and find palpable, what's the meaning? Like, what's the root? Where's it come from? What's the metaphor behind it, etc. And if we play around with these things in different ways, we get this really quite strong understanding of this word. We get collocations, we understand the root, we know its relative frequency, etc., etc. Building up this understanding. Sorry, Alex.
even it has even translate to Russian.
Ah, right. In Cambridge.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know they had foreign language translations in there.
It has, but only 20,000, approximately 20,000 words.
Uh-huh.
But in this 20,000 it has translation for.
Oh, right. Ah, okay, so 20,000 of them are translated. Again, that's probably because it's sort of the graduate vocabulary range. They're translating those. That's good. Didn't know that. All right, so there you go. There's a few resources that I hope are useful. ausdicthesaurus.com to help you find extra words, and when you find them, get the collocation. I mean, that Ausdic, I think you can see, it's the fastest and clearest collocation resource, but not always the best. All right, I think we'll finish there. How are we going for time? Have you got your essay from cultural transition essay? Remember, we tried to have a swap with this, and it kind of worked, it kind of didn't. But, so, in other words, in this room, this very room, last Friday, you wrote your piece. You've got your feedback, and you've got your error corrections. And I did say on Wednesday we would do it Thursday, and we didn't get time. We got on to referencing and other things. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at your piece, correct it as best you can, and now you're going to consult with someone else, at least one other, perhaps two other people. Two is better than one. On what do you think? Are the corrections correct?
Yeah, but did you correct it after?
All right, let's go for 20 minutes on that. If you're sitting there without your essay for whatever reason you weren't here or whatever, just work as an editor for somebody else. All right, and we'll go for 20. And then we'll have a break.